Muscular system. There are three types of muscle tissue. They are skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. And so cardiac is found in the heart, so you can see that here. Skeletal is found attached to bones. So your skeleton are your bones, and so this is your bicep. It's the skeletal muscle, and it's attached here and here. And then the last one is smooth, and the smooth muscle is found in your visceral organs, which means the organs in your belly and your chest except for your heart. It's also found in blood vessels. They're found in your eyes to dilate your pupils. They're found in your skin where your sometimes your hair stands up on end if you're either cold or scared. So those are smooth muscles. So Anna, do you know the difference between voluntary and involuntary?
No.
No. If I say, who's going to volunteer to bring this card to Auntie? Do you know what that means?
Yes.
What does volunteer mean?
It means, does anyone want to do this for me?
You got it. So volunteer means you're willing to do it and you're going to do it. And that's sort of the way it is with this too. So voluntary means I'm going to decide to do it. Anna, can you tell your heart to stop beating?
No.
Very good. Do you have to tell your food to go through your intestines?
No.
No. Very good. So cardiac is involuntary. You don't tell your cardiac muscles to contract. Your heart just contracts on its own. Your brain can regulate it, but you thinking about it, you can't say, oh, I'm going to make my heart stop. You just can't do that. Skeletal muscle, though, for the most part, you say, I'm going to move my arm, and you move your arm. Smooth muscle is found in your iris, in your eyes. It's found in your intestines. So you don't have really control to say, hey, I think I'll have the stomach empty now into the small intestine. Smooth just does it itself. So skeletal is voluntary, which we'll get to in a little bit, and smooth is involuntary. It's pretty impressive, sweetie. So all three have this thing called contractility. That means they can contract. And when they contract, Anna, what happens to this muscle when it contracts, to the shape of it? Do you know? If you contract your arm, feel your muscle right in your arm. What happens to it? Do you know?
It gets bigger, kind of.
Yeah, it gets thicker, and it also gets shorter. And so that's what skeletal muscles do. They can get shorter, so they shorten forcibly. And so if I'm going too fast, you just need to pause the video and write in your notes. So there are the three types of muscle tissue. So here's cardiac muscle and skeletal muscle and smooth. William, what do you notice about this and this, about how it looks compared to this? What's the same about these but different about that one?
Well, those two are like they have stripes, but that one doesn't.
You got it. These two have stripes.
That's not what I was.
That's exactly what I was looking for, though. What were you looking for, Anna?
I was gonna say that those have X's in them instead, like the blue things.
Ah, the blue things between them. Sure, that's a good observation, too. Very good. I was looking for stripes. These two have stripes, and we call those stripes striations. And so the first four letters are the same. So this is my cousin Stry. Do you get it? Because I'm Miss Asian. Striation. That's pretty good, huh? Okay, so here's cardiac muscle tissues.
You don't have to have a Stry Houseman.
I don't have a cousin named Stry. It was just a little anatomy humor. Okay, so here's skeletal muscle and here's smooth muscle. The reason that smooth muscle is called smooth is because it has no stripes.
Why doesn't it have any stripes?
I'm going to show you that in a little while. I'm going to show you that video in a little while.
Okay.
One more thing while I'm on this. Cardiac muscle tissue, look at the, well, I'm going to do this later, but one thing to notice about this, look at the shape. Do you see how it branches like that? So this one muscle cell is connected to that one, and that one, and that one. It's kind of cool, huh? So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so here's skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is attached to the skeleton. What's a skeleton?
That's on my body.
That's in your body.
Is like a bone.
Yeah.
That like and there's all kinds of attached together.
Yeah.
Like a skeleton is your face. And that's how it makes your face move. That's how it makes your body run. That's how your body makes little That's how your body runs.
Yeah, your bones, you got it. So skeletal muscles are attached to bones. Skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles have these stripes, and the stripes are called striations. And again, it's nice because they start with the same first four letters. Striations are stripes. And so here's what I want you to do. Here's a skeletal muscle cell. So picture each of your muscles. Let's go backwards a minute and look at the muscles. Here's a muscle. Each of these muscles has a bunch of muscle cells. So here's a muscle cell. If you look inside that muscle cell, here's one cell, here's a nucleus. If you look inside that cell, there's a bunch of these little things called myofibrils. You don't need to know that word, but look at all those little tubes. See this tube right here? We're going to look at one of those tubes now. So this is a little thing inside a muscle cell. And so let's look at it up close. So here's one of those little tubes inside a muscle cell. And look at how it's one color here and a different color here. And then you're back to this color here. And here's the darker one. Do you see how it's a pattern? Dark, light, dark, light. That's your stripe. And so the stripes are caused by proteins. So
I don't see any dark light, dark light.
Well, do you see how it's different here versus here?
Yeah. So you mean the square, you're considering the square dark?
I am.
And the little squish circle light?
I am. That's exactly it.
Actually, that does look a little bit lighter.
It's a little bit lighter. It's hard to tell in this picture, but if you look at it under a microscope, it actually is. So striations are caused by the way the proteins actin and myosin line up.
Wait, so it goes there, there.
Yes.
So
dark,
light, dark, light, and then it would be dark, light, dark.
You got it.
Light,
Perfect,
dark.
perfect, perfect.
What's that big thing over there?
That's a nucleus. It's the thing that makes RNA, which makes proteins. And so the proteins are all these little things in here. And so here's two different proteins. This one's called actin, and I labeled it, the blue one, and the red one is called myosin. Do you see how the myosin attaches here to the actin? Okay, so the reason that you have stripes is that the myosin all lines up on top of each other. So you can see a bunch of dark stuff here. And then the actin, or the place where there's no myosin, all lines up. And so you can see a light part here. So that's what causes the striations. And then here's smooth muscle. You don't see any stripes here, right? The reason is the myosin and the actin crisscross instead, or they just aren't lined up the same way. So instead of having a bunch in a line,
I don't really see stripes, but I see some like piece of.
Yeah, there's some weird pictures back here. I know. That's just the picture that I took this from, so that's not really supposed to be there. But you're right. You're very observant that you noticed that.
And there's some right there.
Right there, yeah. So notice that the actin and myosin aren't arranged the same way. So the actin and the myosin are arranged differently. Yeah, a little bit. Actin and myosin are arranged differently in smooth muscle, so there are no stripes, no striations. So that's why they call it smooth. Really, that's why they call it smooth. So when I ask which ones have stripes, which ones have striations, you can just remember the smooth one is smooth, no stripes, and the other ones do have the stripes or the striations. So now pause this, and I want you to see how you do that. I'll actually do this first. You remember when you have a cell, inside the cell there's a nucleus with DNA, and most cells have one nucleus, and that's true mainly for cardiac and definitely true for smooth. Skeletal muscle is very special. It actually has many nuclei, and that's because it comes from embryonic muscle tissue that these cells that actually fuse together and form a long form a long cell with a lot of nuclei. But the funky thing about them is that these things are very, very long, and so they have lots of protein. It's mainly just one long cell with protein in it, right? Actin and myosin. So it makes sense that you have a bunch of nuclei because they need to make RNA, which makes proteins.
Nuclei?
A nucleus is a thing that has DNA in it, and the DNA are the instructions on how to make you. So there's the DNA, and the DNA turns on for the stuff to make the proteins that are in here. So the DNA makes RNA, and the RNA makes the proteins in here. So you have a bunch of nuclei in here, nucleuses, right, that can make the proteins.
Us's?
Nuclei, well, the singular, if there's, I know, if it's singular, it's nucle, and if you stop pulling that thing, nucleus is one. If you have more, you might say nucleuses, but it's not really, it's nuclei. Okay, so pause this and then get started again, and we'll go over it. Oh, the kids will pause it. Okay, so here's the answers. So striations, yep, they all have striations except the one called smooth. Control, voluntary for skeletal, but you don't have to think about your heart beating or your intestines digesting. They just do that on their own, or the intestines moving food along. Skeletal is attached to bones, for the most part. Hold on. Cardiac is found in the heart, and smooth is found in the belly, organs, blood vessels, stuff like that. Okay, one more fun fact about cardiac muscle tissue. So another fun fact about cardiac muscle tissue, its cells are branched and interconnected. So for example, here's a muscle cell, and you can see it goes to this one, but then it goes to this one, and maybe a different one here. And it might continue off here. It's hard to kind of see that part. These are these are cardiac muscle cells. So this is in your heart.
The white stuff too.
That's when you squish it. You can't see like the stuff in between it. They get squished a little bit, so there's space in between them. So the idea that they're branched and interconnected is an important one. So this one can talk. If it gets excited, it can tell this one and this one to fire too. And one other super important thing is that there are little holes in the membrane. And so if you remember, the electricity of the body is actually ions, sodium ions, potassium ions. If you have little holes in the cell membranes, you can have ions pass from one cell to another cell. So when that happens, the electricity from one cell can affect the other. So if you look at the heart, there's the natural pacemaker of the heart called the SA node.
It doesn't look that much like a heart.
You're right. It's my drawing. Anyway, if you have the SA...
Can I make a heart?
You can make a heart in a little bit. So here's the
I want to make a heart on there.
All right, give me a minute. So here's the SA node.
So I can actually do it?
Yeah. Here's the SA node.
Well, you have to tell me how to use it.
I will. Here's the SA node, and if you have a grandparent who had a pacemaker put in, that pacemaker was put into that pacemaker was put in to make the heart beat the right way, so not too fast, not too slow. You have a natural pacemaker called the SA node. When this fires, it tells all the cells around it to fire. You're going to wait a minute. Okay, so when the SA node fires, it's connected to all the others, and they have the ions that pass from one cell to another cell. So they all fire together. And then there's this part right here, which is not electrical, but there's... So all the cells are interconnected, and they can all send electricity to each other, so that makes the whole top fire. This thing is electrically separated. There are valves, and there's connective tissue that separates it, except for one little kind of bundle of fibers that comes down. It goes around this way, around the muscle cells on the outside, and those fire, and they tell all the muscles around them to fire. So that way your heart beats in a coordinated way. It goes boom, 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 top and bottom, top and bottom, top and bottom. So they're all firing in a coordinated way, and that's because they're all interconnected, and because the ions can go from one to another. And then here's another picture of it. Here's a cardiac muscle cell, and you can see it's connected to another one and another. So they're branched, they're connected, and ions can go from one to the other. And then one more fun fact, and then Anna has something to say. So one more really cool fun fact about heart muscle. Mitochondria account for about 25 to 30% of cell volume. Regular cells have about 2% mitochondria. For skeletal muscle cells, it's about 2% mitochondria, I think. For skin cells, bone cells, way, way, way less. So that gives cardiac muscle... That gives cardiac muscle cells a high resistance to fatigue, because it's a bummer if your heart gets tired. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so I'm going to finish this video in another session, and right now William's going to draw a heart for you. Go ahead, William.
How do you use
Put it right here.
Yeah.
And draw.
Like how do you
Yep, just put it down and watch. William's going to show you the way a heart really looks. But you can't press that button.
Oh, I didn't.
Try one more time.
Okay, so you... Did I do that?
Yep. Hold on.